something.
It's getting there.
Here we go.
Okay, now you're live.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to welcome you to the Planning Commission for October 19th. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:04. Right. Prior to roll call, the city attorney would like to make an announcement to the Planning Commission regarding the teleconferencing of this meeting. So we turn this over to Assistant City Attorney, Ms. Alicia Poon.
Thank you, Chair Kuznick. Prior to roll call, I would like to make clear for the record of this meeting, and it should be reflected in the minutes, that the governor has issued executive orders relaxing the requirements pertaining to remote meetings under the Brown Act. The executive orders authorize this Planning Commission to hold public meetings by teleconference during the COVID-19 crisis. I previously went over the specific provisions of the Brown Act that have been temporarily amended or suspended in order to allow for this meeting to take place by teleconference. And this meeting will comply with all such provisions. Madam Recording Secretary, it would now be appropriate for you to conduct roll call, after which I would ask the chair to recognize me in order to confirm certain matters for the record. Thank you.
Thanks, Alicia. All right, we have Commissioner Edwards.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Marks.
Here.
Commissioner Wallace.
I'm still here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Alpert.
I'm here.
And Chair Kuznick.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we go back to Alicia, please.
Thank you again, Chair Kuznick. I would now like to ask the chair, the vice chair, and the other commission members 3 questions. Rather than ask you to respond separately to these questions, I'll ask all 3. And if the answer is yes to all 3, please say yes and physically raise your hand. Question number 1, can you hear me well? Question number 2, have you been able to hear all previous speakers, including the roll call, clearly? And question 3, are you satisfied based on facial or voice recognition or otherwise that everyone here representing themselves to be a commission member is actually the person they are representing themselves to be? I'm looking for hands and yeses and mute.
Yes.
If you don't mind unmuting some of
Yes.
yourselves.
No, it's all good.
Thanks. All right. Well, I see all hands raised, and the record should reflect that I have received affirmative answers from each commission member present to all 3 questions. That all commission members have indicated they're able to hear each other and these proceedings clearly. And no commission member has expressed doubt that each and every commission member participating by teleconference is in fact the commission member they're representing themselves to be. And finally, I would now like to advise the chair and the commission members and the recording secretary that any votes taken during the teleconference portion of this meeting must be taken by roll call. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Recording Secretary.
All right, we'll do Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. All right, we move to item 4, public comments or written communications. So we have some provisions on how this is handled. So, Jen?
If you'd like to speak under public comment, you may click the raise your hand button on your computer or *9 on your telephone to speak when public comment is being taken. At this time, members of the public can address the Planning Commission on any item not in tonight's agenda.
Okay.
And we do not have any written communication this evening, but it looks like we do have a few hands in the audience, or 1 hand so far. So I'll let Lauren set a 3-minute timer.
Just want to also be very clear that during this portion of the public comment, these are for items not already on the agenda. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Lauren. Let me go ahead and we will grab our first speaker. We have call in user 1, and I'm just gonna unmute you here. Give me just a moment. And through, I don't seem to be able to allow them to talk. Christina or another co-host, maybe, I don't know if you're able to.
Oh dear.
I'm just not seeing the option to.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh,
Can you
there she
hear
is.
me?
Yep. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. So planning commissioners, I just came from the special meeting that you were in jointly with the city council members. And I would like you to please explain to the citizens of San Ramon in the future meetings or in your flyers or communications that you are required to pass to the community. Please explain what is built by right. What right do these developers and outside lawyers all the way from Southern California have, or even from Sacramento? They have no rights. That's why you are the municipal commissioners. You alone have the right, because this is your jurisdiction. They are coming to invade your jurisdiction. It is not only unconstitutional, it is illegal, and there is no such right. You must refuse them, especially on their request to rezone our city. What is left that hasn't been built out are a bunch of hills. I myself actually live on a hill. These hills, they are not safe. You will create a lot of deaths in the future. If you don't consider what I'm sharing with you right now, a lot of these hills are not going to be appropriate to add a bunch of multi-level floored, multi-unit housing. But Sacramento will force you to do so. The lawyers will force you to do so. It is your fiduciary duty to defend the people of San Ramon. That is your sole jurisdiction, which is given to you by our law and by the citizens of San Ramon. Please do not slash your right to defend us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let me go ahead and see if we have anyone else here in the audience. I don't see anyone else. All right, and through the chair, it looks like that was our last public speaker.
Very good. Then I will close the public comments on items that were not in the agenda, and we will move on to item number 5, which is additions and deletions. Additions and revisions, excuse me, there's no deletions. Revisions, and there are none. Item 6, the consent calendar, there are none, there is no items. And so we move to item number 7, approval of the minutes from the October 5th Planning Commission, regular Planning Commission meeting. So commissioners, do we have any concerns or issues with our minutes from the last meeting?
Madam Chair, I would move approval.
I will second.
You. All right, I'll do a roll call vote. We have Commissioner Marks was our mover,
Aye.
and our seconder was Vice Chair Alpert.
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards,
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace,
Aye.
and Chair Kuznick.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. So we have taken care of that. We move on to item number 8, which is the continued items after the closing of public hearing, and there are none. So we finally move to item number 9, which is the continued item on the issue of open the public hearing for the public hearing on the City Village Development Proposal Hearing number 6. And so we will turn that over to city staff, Senior Planner Cindy Yee.
Thank you and good evening again, Planning Commissioners. I have a very short presentation this evening. I'm trying to toggle between screens here, so you'll have to bear with me as I get this particular screen up. I know we also are inviting our applicant up as well. So let me go ahead and start with the share screen. the applicant will be providing a presentation after mine. And so I will go through just a summary of the staff report and then turn it over to the applicant who has a more robust presentation this evening for you. So again, we're presenting the 6th hearing for the City Village on the Bishop Ranch parcel. Tonight, we are going to continue the public hearing, receive public testimony, close the public hearing, and then receive direction from the commission to the staff and applicant on the project, and then the draft conditions of approval that are attached to your report. We're proposing a continuation of the Planning Commission hearing to November 2nd to continue the conversation on the development applications. And as you're aware, the site is located at the intersection of Norris Canyon Road, Camino Ramon, and Executive Parkway. It's a 31-acre site, commonly referred to as Bishop Ranch 6. There's an existing office complex on the property that would be demolished and replaced with 404 residential units from townhomes to detached single-family homes. It's at a density development of 18.5 dwelling units per acre. There's a 2-acre park site, which will be a public park, as well as a 1/4-acre tot lot, primarily located on in the townhome area. There's also an affordable housing component to this project, a mix of on-site units that will be set aside to various income levels, and then a payment of an in lieu fee. As the commission will recall, there's going to be 2 processing tracks for this project. The specific plan amendments and associated CEQA analysis for that specific plan is to be reviewed by the Planning Commission, and then final determination by the City Council. The Planning Commission's review of the specific plan changes and the CEQA work was completed on October 5th with a recommendation to the City Council through Resolution 06-21, recommending approval of the specific plan and associated CEQA changes or CEQA analysis. And then the second track, which is tonight's review of the development applications for project entitlement. And they include applications for the development plan, major subdivision, architecture review, tree removal application, and then again, the associated CEQA analysis for the development applications. That review is subject to review and approval by the Planning Commission. So the staff report indicates that on September 7th, the commission provided comments on development applications that were requested to be discussed at a subsequent Planning Commission hearing. Now that the specific plan recommendation is completed with the Planning Commission, we're focused this evening on the comments that have been received thus far on the development applications, and specifically on September 7th, they related to the Affordable Housing Plan, Street A, and additional open space. So related to the Affordable Housing Plan, the Commission had requested some additional information about the applicant's inclusionary housing proposal, and then a potential for an alternative means of compliance. Staff had presented on September 7th a hybrid approach where, as an alternative means of compliance, in lieu of construction of the 10 moderate units, there could be a potential payment of fees to offset those 10 units converting to market rate. The city provided, or staff had provided, some background information about how fees are collected in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and they can be utilized to support eligible projects, such as extending affordability terms at-risk units, sponsoring housing projects and acquiring land or units for affordable housing. And so the fees that are taken in lieu of those 10 units could go towards eligible projects that would utilize the funds from the trust fund. It was noted in the staff report that although we don't have any shovel-ready projects, there is still the potential, if you were to take in a fee, the city would continue to look at ways to spend that money on furthering the goals of the housing element. And then as it relates to Street A, the commission had requested more information regarding the Homeowners Association liability with public access on private Street A. The applicants provided a letter from their HOA attorney regarding the protections that HOAs have on private streets. That's attached as attachment C in the staff report. We also have this evening our public works team in the audience. They can discuss further about the city's policies that have shifted over time since the city first incorporated, using private streets as an opportunity with subdivisions to reduce long-term maintenance responsibilities for the city. And then in terms of additional open space, the commission had requested more information on the project's open space and that there was a concern of a lack of open space in the proposed site plan. We noted in the report that although there's no minimum open space or landscape standard in the North Camino Ramon specific plan, there are design guidelines that discuss landscape walkways between buildings, and that there are specific guidelines for multifamily standards. The applicant has also provided as attachment D in your staff report an open space exhibit. It does show that the project will be maintaining 21% of their project area as open space, paseos and other common areas, in addition to the 2-acre public park and the 1/4-acre tot lot. So something else to note in the staff report is we provided some background as far as preemptions of local land use decisions, as well as Measure J. The City Village project has been designed to meet all the applicable development standards in the North Camino Ramon specific plan, and then also the recent North Camino Ramon amendments that are being recommended to the City Council. The city does have limited discretion regarding public schools and water service, though there are other jurisdictions, agencies that control whether public schools are required or fees to be paid, and then whether or not there's adequate water service. We have received comments from all of those outside agencies. Those comments received, including East Bay Mud, the fire department, the school district has indicated compliance with Measure J. And then there was a note related to changes to project plans. There's a summary of the changes to the project plans as outlined in the applicant's memorandum. That's attachment A of the staff report. They include page numbers that reflect which sheets have been changed since the June 11th plan set that the commission previously received. One of the changes to note, as we've previously talked about, is the changes to the streetscape on Norris Canyon Road. One of the modifications is you'll see on the left-hand side of your screen the project plans originally in June, and then the new streetscape that's proposed in your October set on the right-hand side. And so just to recap, we are hoping to continue taking public testimony and receiving feedback from the Planning Commission this evening, and then a continuation to November 2nd for further discussion on the development applications. That concludes my presentation this evening. I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen. If there are any slides that the commission would like me to revisit, I can certainly do that now, or I can pull up the applicant's presentation and have them go over their presentation.
I would think that we would hear from the applicant. Unless there is a clarification that any of us need for Cindy. Oh, okay.
So I will go ahead and pull that up and share that screen. Apologize for the delay. I'm working on 3 different screens with 3 different slideshows going. All right. So, and while I'm starting that share screen, I'm going to turn it over to Denise Cunningham with Summerhill Homes. She can tell us who's here in the audience with her, and we'll be able to get started.
Thank you, Cindy. Good evening, Chair Kuznick and Planning Commission. I'm Denise Cunningham, VP of Development with Summerhill Homes, and I'd like to thank you again for your time this evening, and also staff for their ongoing and continued efforts. We also have Robert Freed, Summerhill's CEO, and Kevin Ibrahimi, the Senior VP of Development, with us tonight. And Jerry Engen with Sunset Development is also here this evening. And I'd like to turn it over to Jerry for a few minutes to say a few words, and then I'll proceed with the presentation.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good evening, Chair Kuznick and members of the commission. I'm Jerry Engen, Senior Vice President of Development for Sunset Development Company. And before Denise shares her presentation, I'd like to discuss the very collaborative and iterative process that has resulted really in this high quality development plan before you tonight. Sunset Development, as well as Summerhill, have a great deal of respect for the value and thoroughness that this commission and the planning staff has brought to the process of making the project the best it can be for the city of San Ramon. Subsequent to the concept review, which started this process, this project has been presented to all of the required decision-making bodies within the city. In all, there have been 12 public hearings, including 7 in front of this planning commission before tonight. In all, 20 decision makers, plus staff have provided numerous thoughts, concerns, and opinions that have been shared with the goal of designing a development that will make us all proud. Sunset believes that Summerhill has done a terrific job making numerous revisions to the plan in trying to build consensus and accommodate all of those varying views, including the latest significant revision that Denise is going to be sharing with you tonight. I think it's also important to note that the project was very well received and achieved unanimous approval by the Architectural Review Board, the Housing Advisory Committee, and the Parks Commission. While every decision maker may not feel that the plan addresses all of their opinions or preferences of what this project should be, Summerhill is a high quality developer and knows what it takes to make a great livable neighborhood that will meet the demand of the market. We believe that Summerhill has balanced their expertise with the desires of all the decision makers to make the project the best possible it could be. So thank you for allowing me to speak, and I'm available for questions and rebuttal as necessary. Thanks.
Oh, thank you, Jerry. Next slide, Cindy, please. So this is our, as Jerry mentioned, this will be our 13th public meeting for City Village and the 7th time in front of the Planning Commission. In February of this year, we had our first joint study session with Council and Planning Commission. And that was followed by another study session with the Planning Commission in March. And again, we appreciate all the comments that we've received to date, and we've worked hard to incorporate these changes where feasible into the plans. And we do have a better plan because of it. Next meeting or next slide, please. So at that meeting on October 5th, the focus was on the specific plan amendments. And now that Commission has recommended these amendments to Council, we like to focus on the project level questions that we received from Commission on the September 7th hearing. Specifically tonight, we like to talk about the HOA ownership of Street A, the inclusionary housing program, the open space, and also the ways in which the project supports the city's proposed walking district. Next slide. So for Streets A, Cindy did indicate that we had provided a letter from our HOA attorney that includes more detailed information on this practice. And again, there was more information from the city in the staff report based on the city's preference for the use of private roads. So we're again available to answer any questions if you have any further questions on this topic. Next slide. So the inclusionary housing ordinance, and we've discussed this at previous meetings, Summerhill's proposal is to designate 20 of the units of the towns as affordable deed restricted units for low, very low, and moderate income households, and to pay an in lieu fee for the detached home. And this is consistent with the city's new inclusionary housing ordinance. We believe building these 20 units on site is the best way to bring affordable units to the city in the near future. We did provide some information to staff on the methodology, and we're happy to discuss that further if you have questions on that approach. But again, Summerhill believes building the units on site is the best approach. Next slide, please. So here's the exhibit for open space. And as you know, our plan reflects our careful efforts to balance several important competing goals. One, to provide more housing in the downtown core, providing generous open space, public and private open space for the residents, and providing a diversity of for sale housing types with townhomes and small lot single family homes that really complements the rental flats that are anticipated in City Walk and what buyers are looking for. When the specific plan was adopted in 2012, the city projected that about 350 new units would be developed on this project site and another 110 or so on the adjacent Toyota site. And there's been a lot of changes since that time that couldn't have been anticipated when the plan was adopted. So really it's a balance to provide the right amount of open space and density. And Summerhill has worked very hard to implement a vast majority of the specific plan objectives with limited revisions to the plan that allows for an all residential project and provides much needed for sale housing in the downtown core. And this project provides 404 homes, almost a third of the total units and new residences planned for the specific plan area. And in addition to the new 2-acre public park, we've got community open space that's been added with a playground and tot lot, generous landscaping surrounding the private streets and sidewalks, plus a wide park strip along Camino Ramon and an 8-foot parkway for the entire length of Camino Ramon and A Street, again, extending and implementing the connections that were envisioned in the specific plan and City Walk. And both of these north-south connections include enhanced landscaping and casual seating and gathering areas. And then finally, the private open space, decks, patios, and yards are not colored on this plan, but they're in white. And when you include those, the private space for these homeowners, the total amount of private and public space is in excess of 40% of the site. Next slide. So here's a sample of the court and the row homes. Again, the courts and the rows all have private yards in addition to the generous decks and patios. And all of the homes, including the townhomes, have generous patios and decks as well. Next slide. Additionally, City Village is uniquely situated in the city core, and the homes have been designed specifically for this lifestyle with small lot, single family homes and townhomes. And this neighborhood also benefits from being within walking distance to all the nearby amenities, enhancing the walkability and open space in the community. These include the Iron Horse Trail, City Center, Crow Canyon Commons, the shopping and restaurants provided in these centers, and Central Park is less than a mile away. So again, we believe the plan as proposed provides a great balance of public and private open space. It implements the North Camino Ramon specific plan, and it enjoys the benefits of a walkable community. Next slide, please. And so then finally, to talk about how City Walk City Village fits into the proposed walking district, we have a slide here that shows the proposed walking district plan area. And you can see our property is approximately midpoint. Bishop Ranch and City Village encompass a large portion of this area. And we've been working with the city on City Village for almost a year now. And we've participated in all of the walking district meetings and really wanted to get a good understanding of the intent of the walking district. And we've really embraced this vision, and we've worked hard to incorporate these goals into our plans for City Village. Next slide. So the goals for the proposed walking district, again, are all included in our plan to create a comfortable place for people to walk and bike, identify walking and biking loops, connectivity to nearby amenities, enhance wayfinding, and also provide long-term vision for connectivity. Next slide. And so this exhibit shows the most recent information on the walking district. Since this plan is still in progress, but we've added City Village and City Walk to illustrate how Summerhill has worked with the city and the Walking District Committee to provide continuity and unity in the entire plan area. So you can see on the right side of the screen, City Walk and their proposed street grids and extensions. We've also put City Village on the left side of the screen. And you can see approximately where the arrow is, the dashed lines show the proposed connections that our City Village project will provide to unite and unify and extend this connectivity that's envisioned from City Walk all the way through City Village to Norris Canyon. And that's both along Street A and Camino Ramon. Additionally, we've included an 8-foot wide walking path, which is a generous walking area along both streets. And we have gathering nodes and seating areas to enhance that pedestrian experience. Also, we'd like to point out on B Street, that B Street is kind of in the center of City Village. It runs east and west, and it also connects that grid that was envisioned in the specific plan and allows for a future connection to the west in the future. Additionally, the park in this location invites the greater community and provides multiple entry points, a sense of place and alternate paths to enhance and supplement the walking district. And wayfind can easily be incorporated into the site once the walking district has been finalized. Next slide. So I briefly touched on the connectivity, and this slide really illustrates all the connections that we have to City Village and the park to welcome the greater community. And these entry points are identified with the dark blue circles. We have 13 entry points and connections throughout the property. We've also identified all of the gathering nodes along Camino Ramon and A Street. And these are consistent again with the goals of the future walking district. And these are identified in orange circles. These are open to the public to enhance the walking experience. There are 15 of these gathering and seating nodes. And there, again, as I pointed out previous slide, the light blue towards the middle bottom of the screen shows the potential future connection to the property to the west. Again, consistent with the specific plan. Next slide. We also have a short video to help you experience the new walking paths that are included in City Village. But before we start, I'd like to highlight a few of the stills that include areas of interest along that route that you'll see while you're watching the video. And also I want to let you know that while the video plays beautifully, on most applications, when it's one-on-one, the resolution is a bit limited in a virtual setting. So it isn't as sharp as we would like, and depending on everyone's Wi-Fi connections, it may vary. But we still think it provides perspective, and which is why we've included the video. And now I'll share these slides. Again, these are captured from the video. And this is Camino Ramon at the entrance to the community, showing the walking paths, the enhanced seating and gathering nodes. We've widened the entry. We've provided enhanced pavement and bulb outs, all for an interesting streetscape and an inviting experience. And in response to previous comments. Next slide, please. And here's another view of Camino Ramon. Again, this is south facing and incorporates the vision of the walking district with the 8-foot wide meandering walk extending all the way from Norris Canyon to Executive Parkway, where it'll connect to Bishop Ranch to the south. And Summerhill and the design team have worked together to address the utility conflicts on Camino Ramon. And we were able to maintain the double row of trees now with just a few adjustments here and there, but we're really happy that we were able to figure that out. Next slide. This view is along Norris Canyon, and I think staff had addressed the report may have said that we had double row of trees in this area. Originally, the trees were in the parkway, and now again with utility conflicts, we've shifted the trees over to the south side of the street. Next slide. And this view is along A Street, showing the 8-foot wide walk. Again, this was widened in response to earlier comments. And this park strip again extends the connectivity from A Street as anticipated in City Walk all the way to Norris Canyon. So next slide, please. And this is another view of A Street at the intersection of the main entry and B Street, again with enhanced paving. And this enhanced paving is now included at all of the entries, again in response to comments. And this is what Jerry had alluded to before. We have continued to explore opportunities for additional open space within the community and still preserve the integrity of the plan, the density, and the diversity of the homes, since all have been well received at the previous meetings. What we've heard from all the stakeholders is really an emphasis on green space and meandering walks, particularly along Street A. And we believe the site plan really achieves a good balance of all these objectives. We do have a proposed modification for the commission to consider. Next slide, please. So this exhibit shows an option to widen the majority of the parkway along the east side of A Street. That's where the wider walking path already exists. And we would propose adding another 8 feet to this green space, which would add approximately 5,600 square feet of additional green space. And it creates more of an opportunity to meander that 8-foot walking path and maybe grow and enhance some of those gathering nodes along A Street. So to achieve this, we would remove a few of the parking spots along A Street. You can see them on the left of the top figure. And it allows us to bring in the whole street section outside of these 6 parking stalls. And it wouldn't impact the required minimum guest parking or change any of the proximity of these spaces to the homes. So this illustration, again, on the left, you see the existing plan with the 6-foot parkway and the 8-foot walk. And on the bottom right of the screen, you see the enhanced, the wider 14-foot parkway. Again, this is just to show dimensionally, we haven't added the plant palette or any of the meandering walk, which can be accomplished during the design phase. So again, this would vary 28 to 37 feet, creating this a nice enhanced walkway. So, and to conclude our presentation, I'd like to play our video. And again, you know, as we've all learned working remotely, it appears there are still some limitations. So I apologize if some of the individual feeds are a bit shaky. And I'd also like to thank staff for all their efforts in helping us try and navigate playing a video through Zoom. Cindy, would you be able to start that?
Cindy, before you start, if Kevin Abrahimi, Summerhill Homes, if I could just add one note, the presentation video that you're about to see doesn't reflect A Street, the additional 8 feet that we propose to add to it. So I'm not sure if everyone picked that up, but the video is reflecting the current plan, not the additional proposal that we're showing to increase the width of that pedestrian pathway. Cindy, if you want to go ahead and show the video.
So we start with the boundaries again of the proposed walking district, and you can see that City Village is right in the center of the screen. And we zoom in, and the green lines illustrate the connectivity and how City Village really aligns with the future connections planned for City Walk and the future walking district. We'll be starting with the entrance to the park at the corner of Camino Ramon and Executive Parkway. We wanted to show the experience of actually walking through the park. And you'll notice that the pickleball courts have been removed, again, in response to comments. But the final programming of the park will continue through the design phase, and we'll work with the city on the park amenities. So as we're walking now through Executive Parkway and heading west on A Street, west on Executive Parkway, we make a right turn here at A Street, which is the entry to the community, again with a nice seating area. And this really helps visualize the experience walking through A Street and the walking path. And when we get to the intersection of A and B Street, you can note the enhanced paving in this area. And again, this decorative paving is included at all the major entry points. Again, there's gathering nodes and seating areas along the entire length of A Street. And as we continue along, we're going to take a brief look at the Pocket Park, which includes seating areas, tot lots, barbecue, and picnic benches. And we continue north along A Street. You see the townhomes on the right side of the screen and the court homes on the left side of the screen. And when we get to Norris Canyon, we are going to turn east, turn right. Again, this reflects the trees that are now on the south side of the street. And at Camino Ramon, with the towns on the right, we're going to continue south on Camino Ramon, passing these generous seating areas and gathering nodes as we work our way towards the main entrance off Camino Ramon. Again, we have an 8-foot wide walking path, and we have added entry monumentation and decorative paving and bulb outs for a variation of the street scene and for an inviting experience to the community. And we continue south. The row homes are now on the right side of the screen, and we're going to stop and take a peek down one of the paseos at the staircase and seating area. And then we are going to complete the loop around City Village, bringing us back to the park. This is roughly a 3/4 mile loop, creating a nice route within the future walking district. So this does conclude our presentation, and we are available to answer any questions.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
could I make a request? That video was very helpful, but we were going at, warp speed. Could we look at it again?
It was a marathon.
We're at the jog speed.
Yes.
So is that possible to have it play again?
Yes, let me go ahead and reshare.
Thank you.
Of course.
Would you like the narration again?
That's, just to let me know where I am. Other than that, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, before you start, I think it is interesting, the comparison of where there were parking places and where there's not. I don't know if that is important to fellow commissioners, but it was something that I spotted on A Street. So go ahead.
Okay.
As the reference point, just for everyone, on the bottom right of the screen, if you look, it'll show at all given times as we're watching the video where your location is. So if you get lost, just look at the bottom right and it'll show you in orange color on this map.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm just toggling between screens. So let me just make sure. Can you see that?
There it is.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So again, here you'll notice the street grids, Norris Canyon on the left and Executive Parkway on the right. And we start at the corner of Camino Ramon and Executive Parkway. This is one of the inviting entrances into the park. Again, Kevin mentioned you can follow the red or orange dot on the bottom right of the screen, and it shows you the path we're traveling. So this is Executive Parkway going west. Turning on A Street to the north. This is the intersection of the main entrance and A Street. Stopping at the Pocket Park near the townhomes. And speaking of the parking, we would maintain these handicap spaces. Those would not be eliminated in the new proposal. And this is Norris Canyon going east. And turning onto Camino Ramon, going south towards Bishop Ranch. And we have the row homes on the right side of the screen, heading towards the park.
Thank you. Thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
I don't know how to stop sharing, so you have to give me a minute here.
Sometimes goes onto the other screen.
Yeah. Well, I'm sharing as a video, so I do need to perhaps stop that. Does that work now? I think so. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Cindy.
So at this time, are there commissioners who would like to ask clarifying questions of our applicant? Okay, I see two hands. Okay, Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you. I had a question for a couple of short questions for the applicant. I reviewed the walking district plan today, and A Street lines up with the part of the walking district plan that goes through BR 2600. My first question is, on A Street, do you anticipate putting in a crosswalk between City Village and City Walk across Executive Parkway?
We do not anticipate putting in a crosswalk at this time. I think that would be something to consider once City Walk is developed.
Yeah, the reason I ask is because in order to get to access A Street, if you can't walk across Executive Parkway, where apparently part of the walking district would go through BR 2600, you basically have to go up to Camino Ramon, across at that point, down past the park, down to A Street. More exercise, but the more connectivity would be a straight shot through, which is what the City Walk plan basically shows. I have the same question for E, because it appears that E also ties into part of the walking district in City Walk. I guess your answer would be the same. You're not planning on a crosswalk at this time.
No, and not at E Street. And we don't envision E Street really being the main north-south connection.
Okay.
Through the chair quickly, any connection that crosses a public street that would be a crosswalk would have to be reviewed by the city to ensure there's a safe crossing between the 2 points of access.
Right.
So that would be a decision to do a mid-block crossing between City Village and City Walk.
Right. No, I understand that. I just want to know if they thought about doing that. It would improve the walkability in the City Walk area.
Right.
Walking district, but I'm not sure you want to have them walking in the middle of Executive Parkway. It looked to me like the boundary between City Village and both the Toyota property and BR8 was a retaining wall.
There is a retaining wall along the westerly side of the property.
Okay. Now, in terms of connectivity, if the Toyota property ever gets developed, it looks from your presentation tonight that the idea is to punch through B Street down into the Toyota property and allow the connectivity both to there and potentially over to BR8 if it gets developed. Does that be accurate?
Correct.
Okay. The one thing, two things. One is, in looking at the sidewalks on A Street, it appeared that the sidewalk on the east side was a couple feet wider than on the south side. It struck me in looking at A Street, both in the drawings and also on the videos that you played twice today, that there was more of a straight shot going down A Street if you're on the west side of A as opposed to the east side. Have you thought about widening the west side rather than the east side?
No, we kept the widened walkway on the east side of A Street because that's the area where the park is located, which is a significant portion of the entrance area, and really keeps people on one side of the street. It's also where the pocket park is located. So it's, there's a sidewalk on both sides. The sidewalk on the west side of the street is 5 feet. More in keeping with a regular sidewalk. But we felt that the right side of the street or the east side of the street was a more appropriate place to create this enhanced walk and connection.
The reason I brought it up is because of the walking district guidelines, sort of the minimum size for sidewalks is 5 feet, which actually would be the sidewalk on the west side of A Street. So it does meet that potential standard. It just seemed that when I looked down A Street, there was a much less traffic, it seemed, crossing if you went on the west side, but it may not make that much of a difference. You had asked a question you brought up in the video, and that is whether to widen the planting area on the east side of A Street and delete some of the parking, or actually you'd be deleting some of the side of the street on the east side of A Street. You know, my initial reaction is, I think I'd rather keep the street wider than the planting area. You'd be able to park. So my initial reaction is to keep A Street on the east side the way you originally planned it, with the one planting area, not extend the planting area out. Question, because A Street is the main thoroughfare through City Village, do you anticipate some type of bike path along A Street? I didn't see any marks indicating there was any type of bike path.
No, we had not anticipated including a bike path along A Street. It's one of the smaller neighborhood streets.
Well, this is A Street. That's the one that goes north-south.
Correct.
Okay.
It would be a shared bike and car street.
Okay. Okay, that's all the questions I had.
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace. Commissioner Albert, you're next in my lineup here.
Right, thank you. A Street, and this is maybe premature to ask, what speed limit do you anticipate that street being, and what thoughts do you have around making sure cars don't go so fast when they're sharing the street with either pedestrians and or bicycles? And maybe it was the video that made me think that the cars are going really fast, but yeah, I just was curious. Have you given any thought about how to keep cars going safely and slowly through the neighborhood?
I would defer the speed limit to the city. They will post the required speed limit. You know, on A Street, we do have some of those bulb outs in different locations, and that creates, you know, it helps people slow down. It reminds them to slow down. Again, if you were to widen the street or the parkway a little, you could do a little more meandering. And there are some bulb outs around where the park is, and some of those features actually will tend to slow cars, but we would work with Public Works.
Great. And then, I'm sorry. And then sort of the second question, maybe it was the video was misleading, because it looked like every time you crossed C or E or yeah, I guess it's E Street and C Street, there always were quite a few cars, you know, that were like queued up to, you know, take on the pedestrians. Had you thought about, and I couldn't tell from the plan, does there enhance paving at those intersections to kind of remind people that it's a more walking place versus a asphalt speedway?
Yeah, that's a good point. And we do have enhanced paving at all of the entry points and that main intersection. Okay,
and I guess my question was really more at those cross streets, the east-west streets and A Street. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so yes, there are enhanced paving there.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Marks.
I wanted to ask a question about the pocket park. The way it's designed in plan and what I thought I observed through the video was that it's accessible to anyone walking along A Street. I thought it was going to be for the homeowners, but it appears as though it's a shared park for whoever is walking on A Street as well as the homeowners. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, it won't be there won't be any type of fencing or barrier to indicate that the public can't use it.
Okay. And then just a request. You introduced some new slides, some stills, and I found a couple of them very helpful. Could I request that you print out some and as quickly as possible get them to us? I like very much some of the information on them, and I would appreciate some time to review them more than what we typically get from a Friday to a Tuesday. So if you could, I would greatly appreciate that. I did also want to say that I greatly appreciate the letter from Miller, Star, and Regalia. And it did answer my questions. I'm still a little curious about what the premium costs of this insurance would be. And here's the reason why. And here's why I still have a little bit of a concern about the use of A Street. I don't need someone to tell me the history of private streets and developments. What I'm concerned about or interested in is the use of private streets to access a public facility like a park. You can't get into the 7-car parking lot, I should say, without going on A Street. I don't know if that's been done in the city before, and if our public works people want to talk about that, that's fine. But that's part of the concern here. And then the other is A Street itself. There will be public parking on A Street and public cars driving through A Street, not visiting friends necessarily, but either cutting through or parking to visit the park. And so again, that seems unusual. But if we have some experience here in San Ramon, I'd appreciate hearing from our public works people about that, and any experience you have at other projects that you developed.
Sure. I'll address the insurance question. It's about $3.50 a door per month. So it's minimal. And then we do have a lot of experiences, as a lot of cities really have gone to this approach of privately owned streets with a public access easement. So it's become rather routine, and it's often what's asked for. And we've not experienced any issues with it. The HOA attorneys, they're all familiar with managing that as well.
Even as the only access to a public amenity.
Yeah, I believe we have other amenities that you can also access from a private street. With the public access easement, it has to be open to the public for use.
I realize that. It's the liability side of it that concerns me.
No, I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Edwards, questions for the applicant?
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Very good. I have a couple here. So let's go back to the Street A and then this issue of some of the sidewalks. I was interested in how you changed the green part on the wider part of A. And for my 2 cents, I kind of liked it with less green and more paving. And I want to say that one of the things that when I just do a lot of walking is how shoulder to shoulder, 2 people and a dog. And if I meet 2 people and a dog, do we have enough room to walk? And while the green place is nice, it does limit the walking space, and that seems to be a priority. So, but I do want to question. I know that 5 feet is the required minimum, or the only what's required for a sidewalk. But I would say that it would be, for me, much more desirable, or had you thought about keeping that 8 feet sidewalk on that part on Norris? So, and even on that last little part of Executive, so that the sidewalks, the major sidewalks that interface with what will be the walking district, are consistently 8 feet. When the video was zooming along Norris, I'd actually prefer a little more sidewalk and a little less green. Again, for the same, 2 people walking shoulder to shoulder with a dog, encountering, other people. So that's one of those concerns. And just wondered if you had some thoughts on that. And again, if you're looking for feedback, I kind of like the less green on A Street than the more in this iteration. Go ahead.
No, I appreciate the comments, and really on Norris, to get a widened sidewalk on Norris, you'd really be sacrificing the parkway. And as you move further west down on Toyota's side, I believe what's shown on their future plans will be a monolithic sidewalk, 5-foot sidewalk. So that'll be fairly consistent, I believe, along Norris Canyon. So, we really put the effort into providing the 8-foot wide path along the major east, north-south connections on A Street and A Street and Camino Ramon. And again, along the entire length of the park on Executive.
All right. Other clarifying statements, questions for the applicants on this one? Can I also ask you, however, for clarification, this is on the document, the City Village Affordable Housing Plan, packet page 17. Chart there of the 3-bedroom and 4-bedroom units at the bottom of the page. This is amendment attachment B. Sorry, I should have given you some warning here. I'm mystified the unit count for the low income. There's 4 that are 3-bedroom units, and then to the right of that it says 5 units, and then to the total it says 6. So I just wanted to, okay.
I think, Cindy, you can speak to that. I think that might have been carried over from an error that was on the previous
I just wanted
version.
to get clarification. All right.
Yeah. Sorry.
So 4 and 1 would give us, or 4 and 2. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Right.
So, that was clarified in our September 7th meeting. It wasn't reflected in the affordable housing plan. I have the slide here from that September 7th meeting, and the bedroom counts. We had caught that after the presentation went out, but you'll see here that the unit counts do line up now.
Okay, so it's 2 and 2, 2 and 4. Okay, thank you. And then 4 and 6.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I
Great.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Marks, your hand is still up, or just have I? Okay.
No, that's just simply a matter of I haven't.
That's okay. That's all right. I just wanted to make sure. All right. So any other clarifying questions for the applicants at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to thank you. And then we may or may not be back. But at this time, I'm going to turn to our recording secretary and open public comment. So take it over, Jen.
Thank you. So just as a reminder, if you'd like to speak, you can press the raise your hand button on your computer or *9 on your telephone if you're calling in. And we'll take it over to our speaker list here. And I'm just going to get set up real quick. It looks like we have one hand up. All right. Oh. Okay, call in user 1. You can go ahead and speak whenever you're ready.
Hi, planning commissioners. I think you had good intention when you asked the developer to, add a lot of walking access to this development. However, I want to share with you, I'm a poor pauper living in San Ramon in a townhome community. I'm a very victim of a lot of walking access into my HOA community because many people here, they have entitlement mentality. They don't appreciate HOA is a private community, especially if it's townhome or an apartment. So I have had to call our SRPD many times. And, given the current circumstances that is so hostile towards our police, I ask you to please require the developer to put in their HOA CC&Rs to provide in HOA security so that they can take care of their own HOA disputes among themselves and spare our SRPD, who have to run around taking care of problems that are really created by these kind of multi-unit housing that really brings in a lot of trespassers and people of entitlement mentality. Secondly, Mr. Ingen, I just want to say that I don't think that you have ever lived like people like me. I, fought you in the VR games. And if you don't go and play the game that you bring into our San Ramon city,
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you to stay on the topic, please.
It is on the topic because he
No,
said
it's
he
not.
invites rebut. It is because it's an example of what his mentality is. I ask that
You're here to talk about the
go
project,
try
please.
to interpret how living the quality of life is when you live in the community that you build. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Looks like that was our only public speaker. I'm not seeing any other hands, so through the chair, if you'd like to. Oh, I have one more popped up and disappeared.
Should we give him a second, another second here? Yes, there we go.
There we go. Oh,
okay.
She keeps disappearing. Let's see. Let me see. I don't have a hand raised any longer, but we'll give it just another moment if you choose to raise your hand. All right, Joyce Carr, there she is.
There we go. Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I kept thinking you could hear me and you couldn't hear me. Anyway, thanks for the opportunity to speak. The video of the tour of the whole complex really, it kind of shocked me. It's bigger than I had even imagined it would be. And I looked at all of those homes, the number of people in each of those homes that are going to be driving their cars, the traffic in the area. It doesn't look to me like it's going to be very peaceful. There's got to be places for all of those children that are shown in the pictures, and classrooms and schools, and of course our water issue. I just do not think that it looks like what we're thinking it's going to be in this peaceful community, a walking community. I think there's just going to be a lot of traffic. There's going to be a lot of movement, a lot of action, people going and coming and whatever. And it really concerns me. I've lived here in San Ramon for many, many, many years, and I love it here. And the thing that I always say is I love it because it feels peaceful. So again, just looking at those homes and just starting to multiply how many people are going to be living in there just opened my eyes even further to the traffic. And as I said, the schools and the water situation. And that's what I would like you to know of what I'm thinking about the project. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being part of our participants tonight.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Thank you, Joyce.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Okay. That may have wrapped it up for our public comments. I don't see any other hands.
I will agree with you, and we will close public comment on this topic. So thank you very much. All right, at this time, commissioners, we have an opportunity to discuss many things on the agenda tonight. So we have not gotten to the draft conditions of approval or some other things, but want to hear from you in terms of what we're next steps. Are you ready for the draft, to walk through the draft conditions of approval, or more discussion on the three topics that we had today? HOA, the Street A, and the open space reconsideration. We got two. Okay, Commissioner Edwards.
I'm ready to go through the conditions of approval.
Okay, very
We've
good.
had a significant amount of discussion on this project.
Okay. Commissioner Wallace, what are your thoughts?
I wanted to address the issue that was raised in the staff report and also by Ms. Cunningham that had to do with the affordable housing aspect of the project. Was one of the ones that raised the idea of deferring some of the, building some of the affordable units in exchange for getting some cash from the developer, and the belief that it might be more beneficial for the city and more productive in terms of producing affordable units to have a significant amount of cash than 10 or 6 very low income units. That was based upon the obvious discrepancy between what the units could be sold for and what the market rate would be. The developer chose not to pick that particular price bracket, but offered the moderate income as the in lieu fee. Since that idea was originally brought up, I've received 2 pieces of information from the city on the Affordable Housing Fund itself. One was presented to the Housing Advisory Committee about 2 weeks ago, and the other was presented to the City Finance Committee yesterday. I do not know what the Finance Committee did on the proposal, which I'm going to summarize for you, because it sort of crystallized my thoughts on the affordable housing issue on this project. Currently, there's about $4.5 million in our affordable housing fund. And through the next 4 years, they expect that the Free and Neighborhood 5 will generate about $9 million for the affordable housing fund. So that's about $13.5 million in the kitty. There's also some potential for some other projects to provide funds for the affordable housing, but at this point, staff is not willing to really count on that money coming in. So we're looking at $13.5 million over the next 4 years. What was presented to the Finance Committee, and maybe staff at the end of my talk will be able to tell us where that went on the Finance Committee. But what happened is, you recall that we green-lighted the Aspen Woods project a number of years ago, which is the senior housing facility down in South San Ramon off of El Costa and Kimball that used to be a UCB branch. Well, in the interim time, the financing for that whole project has changed, and what used to be a partial market rate and a partial affordable housing project is now, hopefully, will be all affordable housing, which means there'll be about 122 units that will go towards our arena allocation for affordable housing units. The problem is one of financing, and the short version is, what, as I understand it, the Finance Committee was asked to commit $10.5 million out of the Affordable Housing Fund to support the building of Aspen Woods. That has not, I don't know what the Finance Committee did, but of course, that's all subject to the developers getting financing to build the project. Assuming that that's what happens, it was my conclusion after looking at all the numbers and the fact that the city paid $189,000 to convert one of the Central Park units to affordable housing, that the money we were talking about in terms of the moderate income housing from this project would maybe pay for 10 affordable housing projects someplace else in the city. As the staff report noted, we don't have any shovel-ready projects, as they described it, to preserve some of the rental units that will be coming off the below market rate scale in subsequent years. So I have somewhat reluctantly concluded that in terms of this project, that I think what we should approve is the affordable housing requirements of the inclusionary housing ordinance that the city has for the North Camino Ramon specific plan, which would basically be that they build and sell 20 units at various affordable levels as set forth in their proposal. I wanted to bring that up because I'm the one who started this whole subject, and I thought I should try and bring it to a close. So I'm working my way back to where Commissioner Edwards started from about 2 months ago. We'll build all the units. So in terms of the other subjects that were raised by staff in the presentation, I think I've covered those, particularly on the A Street issue about widening the greenery and reducing the size of the street. Other than that, I'm prepared to go through the draft conditions of approval as well as Commissioner Evans.
Commissioner Marks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really have one question, and it starts like this. Plan sheets SP6, L1.0, L1.4, and L1.6 all show the 2-acre park as fully designed with various amenities, including an entry plaza, pickleball courts, a great lawn area, a grassy meadow, tot lot, etc. Proposed conditions 86 and 100 refer to new conceptual park plans and two alternative designs. So I'm wondering, when we are finally asked to take a vote on this, it seems odd that we would be voting to approve a packet of plans that our conditions of approval are saying, in part, are going to be changed. It is common to give staff the leeway to make minor changes to an approved project that are consistent with the approved set of plans. But here we're talking about wholly changing or at least potentially wholly changing the proposed public park. And so that seems very curious to me, how we can, in fact, one of our standard conditions starts out something like, the plan shall be constructed substantially in compliance with the plans dated whatever. That wouldn't be the case here. I want to propose a solution and see what the staff and the applicant think about it. It's not uncommon when you make these kinds of changes and you're not sure what the changes are actually going to be, to simply white out what's in the interior of the park, leave the contours of the park as they are, and have a note inside that the final design of the park, in this case, would be made by working with the city's Parks and Community Services Commission, which I think is the organization that should design this park. But to have us have 4 plans that show a park one way, and then we're going to have 2 alternative designs according to one of the conditions and something potentially different, it just seems like, it seems odd to me. And I just wonder what the thinking is behind those 2 conditions and those 4 plan sheets.
Thank you. I have to agree that I found it troubling going through the conditions of approval, the frequent reference to the development of this park, and they seem to be somewhat in conflict. But I was going to get to that when we got to the higher items.
I can wait if you want me to wait for an answer, but it just
Cindy
seems.
could respond to that, actually. Yeah, I think Cindy is able to respond to that question.
Sure. So perhaps maybe just, I want to just back up in terms of the requirements of the Parkland dedication requirements. So with any subdivision applications, there's a requirement for either a combination of parkland to be dedicated, payment of an in lieu fee, or a combination of parkland and dedication of in lieu fee. There actually isn't a requirement for the developer to design a park. They can receive credit for the design of the park and then construction of that park towards some of the fees that would be owed for the site. But technically speaking, parkland dedication only requires a set aside of land. As we were going through this process, the applicant had presented a conceptual plan, which we sort of had a lot of conversation about what should go in the park and what shouldn't go in the park. And I think that was a bit premature, because typically the requirement is really just to set aside the acreage, and then the requirements in the conditions of approval would typically state that the 2-acre park is going to be set aside, and then the design of the park would be done through a review process with the Parks Commission. There's 2 sets of conceptual plans that the Parks Commission would review, and then ultimately they would choose one of those plans to move towards construction and improvement plans. In this situation, I think Commissioner Marks's recommendation to essentially white out that 2 acres and identify it as a future public park and require it as a condition of approval to set aside the 2 acres, and then the conditions that are related to turning it over to the city upon construction. I think that those would be appropriate conditions, and then leave the park design to the Parks Commission. They have already provided us some preliminary comments about what they would like as far as programming in the park. And so that will be considered when we do finalize those plans and bring them to the Parks Commission. They will have those elements that they've already commented on. So we can certainly do that as part of the plan sheets and the 5 or so pages that were identified, and modify those as a condition of approval.
I would appreciate that, and I think that's consistent with good planning practice. Thank you. That's my only question at this time.
Mr. Albert.
Thank you. So 2 comments, one on the affordable housing, and I was initially on the same page as Commissioner Wallace, and the staff report clarified, and my test was, would the $1.7 to $2 million benefit more or less than the 10 homeowners that, making those 10 units affordable? And based on the comments in the staff report, if it's possible to convert 10 units at 189,000, that's right smack dab in the middle of the 1.7 to 2 million. And that's not even certain that there are 10 units that we can convert to long-term affordable for 189,000. More likely, by the time we find them or they become available, it'd be more. So my conclusion, and I got to the same place as Commissioner Edwards and Commissioner Wallace, it's better to get the units now than hope for some way to help 10 families in the future. Regarding Street A and the proposed changes, I heard Commissioner Wallace that said he prefers the parking in the smaller parkway. I heard Commissioner Kuznick prefer wider sidewalks and less green. And I'll be honest, I'm sort of still pondering both of those positions. I tend to lean more towards more concrete and wider sidewalk and a little smaller grass or planting area between the sidewalk and the street, just for exactly what Commissioner Kuznick said. And then I guess my only real concern about Street A is, given that bicycles and vehicles are going to share that street, anything that we can do to ensure the speed limit is really low would be kind of a high priority. And I know that's a city planning, city staff, engineering function, but to the extent that the street can be constructed in a way that keeps cars slow, whether it's additional bump outs or paving or whatever it could be to keep the cars moving at a reasonably low speed, because I think it will be a busy street with people coming and going, as either a bypass to Camino Ramon or just getting in and out of the complex. So I guess those are my comments at this time until we get to the conditions, because I have some questions there.
Thank you. I'd like to also kind of piggyback onto the comment about the A Street. And, in the conditions, it talks about this being a private street. And I thought it was really interesting that we just got in our city manager's report a discussion of a different neighborhood who is very concerned about the private street. And while it works for the city on the short term in terms of the cost, and maybe it is a trend for privatizing our streets. I think most people in a city think of the streets as public streets. I'm not all that excited about this being a private street. I think streets should belong to all of us. in terms of maintenance, like, one of the things that happened to San Ramon was they got dinged out in Doherty because the developer planted the wrong trees, and they've spent millions of dollars fixing sidewalks and roots because of roots. Is this something that the HOA will have to ultimately take on? And I'm not sure that would be all excited about this costing millions of dollars in the future. So that's one of those concerns that I have about the idea of the private street. And I do agree. I think it will eventually become a shortcut from when there are more employees in the office parks trying to get to quick routes to freeway access. So I am concerned about that as well. So that was one of my issues about the public streets today. Okay, conditions of approval. Okay, I saw Commissioner Edwards, you go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Kuznick. I wanted to just check in on the process of reviewing the conditions of approval. I see that there's about 114 conditions, so I don't know that we need to be discussing every one of them. If there's things that individual commissioners, I think, have questions about or would like to discuss, I just wanted to put forward that as a suggestion.
I agree with you in terms of, I don't think we need to go item by item, but I do think that I would feel reluctant to not allow everybody the opportunity as we go through the 18 pages. If you have one of these in which you have jotted comments, please, you don't have to raise your hand. I'm really okay if you just want to speak up. I know it's more civilized to raise your hand, but more not as in the true sense of gentility. So that's sufficient for all. Turning to packet page 23, then the draft conditions of approval. First page seems pretty straightforward to me. Go ahead.
In our typical conditions, we start out early on with a condition that I referenced before, where we say the project shall be constructed in substantial compliance with the plans dated whatever. That's not included in this, and I think it should be.
Okay.
I had a comment on page 1.
Okay.
That is it. I brought up with the applicant the issue about B Street. If the Toyota property ever became available for development, that the access to that property would be basically through punching through B Street into the Toyota property. I didn't remember seeing anything in the conditions of approval that would require that.
Okay.
And I'm wondering whether there shouldn't be something in there to that effect. Otherwise, you basically keep up the Berlin Wall, and anybody accessing the south side, and that would go for BR8 as well, if that were developed, would have to go out either on Executive Parkway or Norris Canyon Road. You would not have any interconnectivity, which they've shown on their application, or at least on the presentation tonight, the extension of B Street into the Toyota property, if it was warranted and available for development. So I'm thinking there should be a condition of approval that would require that in the event that that part of the property in the North Camino Road specific plan became available for development.
Okay. I think they can draft some language to that effect.
I'm not sure that we should include language like that. I think that in many ways that ties the Planning Commission's hands for future development on that other site. I tend to think that if we're going to include a requirement like that, it would be with the development that goes in to the west. Once we have the opportunity to see what that other development looks like.
Well, the problem is if you don't put it in now, then the subsequent development of Toyota property is basically at the mercy of the homeowner association on City Village. If they don't have an obligation to allow B Street to be punched through, then, basically the Toyota properties wouldn't have any interconnectivity. And the same would be true of BR8 as well.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Regarding the connection to the west of the property, there is a grade difference that exists between the Toyota site and the city village site. And then further south, not as great of a grade change between Bishop Ranch 8 and City Village, but we could ask for a public access easement through Street B and have perhaps identify a future public access easement on that western property line that could make those future connections. It's similar to how Toyota approached the sidewalk connection. There's currently no sidewalk on Norris Canyon. When they developed that property, we had put in as a future potential sidewalk to be installed if, in the event the property adjacent were to develop, that then that sidewalk would be required to be installed. It could be something similar to that, where we identify a future access easement so that there could be at a minimum a pedestrian connection where there's a significant grade change, and maybe look at what opportunities could be on that southern part of the property.
Okay. Is that?
I could support that.
Okay, thank you.
I could support that.
Thank you. Commissioner Wallace, does that address your concern?
Yeah, I think, let's put it this way. I think we should, as Ms. Yee says, we should look at it and see if it's feasible to do it that way. The concept of an access easement seems to me to be an appropriate one.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Through the chair, one
Yes.
other clarification related to Commissioner Marks's comment about the substantial conformance. I believe condition number 1 does talk about substantial conformance with the October 13 plans. But I'm just wondering if there's some additional language I need to include.
You're right. My mistake.
Okay,
You're right.
got it.
Okay. Turning the page.
We're on
All right.
page 2.
We're on, yes, page 2 of 18.
Okay, I had a question.
Okay.
Paragraph 10, subparagraph 4 refers to recycled water, one of our favorite subjects.
Mhm.
But then it has a line in there. It says, in order to avoid runoff into the creek. Is there a creek on the property? Because I looked on the EIR, there didn't seem to be anything on the hydrology section dealing with a creek. Maybe we're all sensitive to San Ramon Creek and that type of thing, but I didn't think there was a creek there. And assuming there isn't one, we could, I think, with impunity, strike that portion of it out.
Yes.
I would say there, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say there is an issue with discharging of reclaimed water into the storm drain basins, so there would be some need to try and minimize that.
Well, I'm all in
That
favor
storm
of that.
drain goes to the creek or not.
Okay,
I think probably more appropriately might be watershed as opposed to creek.
that's fine.
Jean, I think in that same area, item number 4,
Mhm.
after the words public streets and sidewalks, I would like to add the words and construction equipment.
All right. Second important point. Okay. All right. Seeing no other hands, other items, speaking up, page 3, excuse me, page 3. Okay.
Item
Any-
16.
Item 16. Okay, yes, I have some questions on that one as well. Go ahead, Commissioner Marks.
In the second sentence, it begins with the word provided. The provided side is the developer, and certainly they will be providing garage space that meets those dimensions. I'd like to add the words "and maintained." Garages have a way of becoming something other than just a car garage. You find workbenches, you find washing machines, drying machines, etc. And I think that's the property owner or the user. And so I think we need to have both provided and maintained.
I do know that later in the conditions, it does specify many of those prohibitions, but we can add that. Right. So my question was on that one, as it gets down to the same paragraph, after the word says the community development director, it says shall include policies requiring the interior garages be kept clear of items, and it specifies them. So my question is, are there consequences of not abiding by this? Is that part of CC&Rs?
Correct. So the sentence is referencing the community development director reviewing and approving the CC&Rs. It would ultimately be up to the HOA to enforce the clear space within the garage.
Okay.
So just to be devil's advocate, we own motorcycles. Would we not be allowed to park motorcycles in the garage? Because that would prevent the garage from being used by cars?
No, it's really about putting permanent structures or structures that would prevent you from parking a car there. You could move the motorcycles if you needed to, and you could park a car there, but you often find workbenches that take one of the dimensions and minimize it to the point that a car can't be parked there. You find other things that get put there that do the same thing. And that's the whole point, is to maintain the garage for the car if possible.
I guess I'm just concerned about this body, the Planning Commission, regulating what people can do inside garages that they own. And I suppose I'm looking for a rationale, maybe, for why the Planning Commission has an interest in regulating what people do in their private garages. If I have a 2-car garage and I own 1 car, why can't I use my garage for the storage of my bicycles, my storage of a workbench? Is that within the purview of what we should be doing as a planning commission?
Well, it comes down to wanting to preserve those parking spaces for guest parking. And so at times we've had a few developments where I think Cindy mentioned the Park Central, where they had tandem parking spaces. And so residents were found parking in the guest parking stalls rather than the garages. And so then that does not have the guest parking available for those visiting. And so it did create some issues with the HOA. So to a degree, the HOA does need to enforce the 2 parking spaces in the garage because there's a driveway to be parking on. And so one way for the HOA to enforce, because I know it is difficult, is to maybe do an annual inspection of some sort that guarantees that the spaces are free and clear at one point throughout the year for parking of vehicles.
Okay, I mean, it seems to me that this would be something that would be addressed at the CC&R level by the association. And it doesn't seem to me that the way to regulate it is to say that you have to keep your garage space clear. The issue is to say, if you're a resident, you don't get to use the guest parking. But it strikes me as something that is for the association itself to be controlling, not the planning commission. And others may not agree with that, but that's just a comment that I wanted to make sure that I made.
So would you be comfortable if we suggested that in that paragraph where it says will be subject to review and approval by the community development director, includes policies that require interior garages to be kept clear or striking the specifications in order to, or of any manner that would prevent cars from parking in it?
It would be my preference to end that condition of approval with the interior garage dimensions of 20 by 22 feet shall be provided for each 2-car garage. Period. That would be my preference.
Okay. Fellow commissioners, thoughts?
Well, the problem with that approach is that you have the situation Ms. Chamberlain described, is that if you have people putting things in their garage and their cars can't be parked, the ones that they own, they're going to park them in the guest parking, which would eliminate the guest parking. The whole point was to have people park in their garages so that the guest parking would be free.
I think we have a difference of opinion on this particular
Well,
item.
I'm inclined to the community development director reviews and approves the HOA CC&Rs. I'm inclined to have all of the requirements that the city expects the HOA to manage, and that's part of the review and approval process of the CC&Rs that will get submitted. And one of them I don't have the right language, but the right language is that you're not parking in guest parking, similar to what Commissioner Edwards said. The HOA has a lot of responsibilities, and the city's going to ultimately approve the CC&Rs. So I think we can, put the language here that says that's one of the components of the CC&Rs we expect, and then leave it up to the HOA to develop the appropriate language, and then city community development director will approve that or not based on the language that comes up.
And through the chair, this is a common, this condition appears in most CC&Rs throughout the city of San Ramon already.
So is it redundant if it does appear in the CC&Rs to have it as part of the condition of approval, or will it be part of the CC&Rs?
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, it does wrap its way into the CC&Rs, correct, Cindy?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The limitation on the requirement to park 2 cars in the garage does wrap its way into the CC&Rs, correct? And is enforced by the HOAs as we currently have structured them?
Yes. So the way that we've structured the conditions is that when the developer is preparing the CC&Rs, they would include provisions that would address these conditions. And so if the conditions identify a policy that would require annual inspection and making sure that the interior space is kept clear, then we would be reviewing the conditions to make sure that, or I'm sorry, we would be reviewing the CC&Rs to make sure that they include those provisions in the CC&Rs once they're adopted. And they're really, I haven't really thought beyond, as Commissioner Edwards has pointed out, that there is a potential because you are more centralized. There could potentially be less of a need to have 2 cars in some of these units. So having a policy that specifically requires both spaces or all of the spaces being dedicated for being clear, that could potentially be problematic for an HOA to manage through that. But if we do intend for all of those spaces to be kept clear, we would be checking the CC&Rs for that language.
Practical side of this is HOAs don't do this. It is difficult for them to do to tell a neighbor, clear out your garage because you're parking in the guest parking. It is, you put this in a situation like this because from an enforcement standpoint, if the homeowners association is not doing what the CCNRs say, because they have an elected board that believes the way that Commissioner Edwards does, you not only have an impact on the guest parking, you have an impact on the street parking. You're putting the HOA in the position of playing the code enforcement officer role for a city, and it just doesn't work that way. The practical side of this is take a look at some of the HOAs around town. They're full of stuff, partly because the townhouse projects tend to be smaller. They don't have a lot of storage. One of the stalls almost always disappears. So if you're looking to put the HOA in a position where they get to play cop, you're putting them in a position where it's very, very dicey. That's the practical side of how this works. Freedom, yeah, I can go along with we shouldn't regulate everything, but we do have a stake in making sure that parking in a project works. And the only way to do it when you don't have driveways is to have a requirement that either the city can enforce or the HOA can enforce.
Well, isn't what you're trying to enforce, thou shalt not park in public parking and guest parking?
Well, you know, you don't want to even go there, I don't think. You simply want to say that you need to keep the garages clear.
I'm going to disagree because if I don't own 2 cars or own any cars because we're next to a transit site, we're across the street from a business park and I have no cars, I should be able to keep stuff in my garage and not get penalized for not having those 2 cars empty. You know, and I get what you're saying, that we're putting the HOA in an enforcement role, but I feel that's one of their responsibilities.
Yeah, but what do you do in a situation where somebody builds a permanent structure in the garage and then sells the unit and the newcomer does have 2 cars?
I would agree that's a different issue that perhaps warrants.
Well, and I think that it's incumbent then on the association, which is the governing body for the association. It is incumbent on them to enforce it. And at that point, that owner that has 2 cars does get a notice of violation from the association that they have to remove the structure. I think that's the way homeowners associations work. And I've been a member of an association, and we have had to violate people.
When they work, that's how they're supposed to. Take a look at the garages around town.
Yeah. So I feel like this is one of those things where we're commenting on a document that doesn't exist yet. Well, but
yes, that in the abstract, that's correct. But what we're doing in the conditions of approval is providing what shall go into the CCNR. And the bottom line, as I understand it from this portion, is to make sure that homeowners don't park in guest parking. I mean, that's what we're trying to accomplish. And it seems to me that there should be some way to provide language to that effect, that if the HOA can enforce it, they can enforce it. But otherwise, we're just taking a pass and we're giving them, we're going to wind up with guest parking, and there's no provision in the CCNRs to prevent that.
So perhaps the compromise is to maintain the language in here about the intent. So, to discourage neighborhood parking conflicts, the CCNRs for any homeowners association governing such neighborhoods, which will be subject to, or will, just get rid of that which, will be subject to review and approval by the community development director, period. And then the community development director can work with the developer on whatever those CCNRs ultimately say.
So maybe Ms. Chamberlain wants to be the bad cop here.
There's also another maybe provision that could be included. If the goal is to, as we've discussed, not have residents parking in guest stalls, there could be parking permits issued to homeowners so we know those are parking in guest stalls, and then they could be towed at their own expense. So there are different ways that we could address this issue. So those folks who do not have vehicles, their garages may have extra storage in them. But for those who need to park both cars in it, then they're going to be required to maintain the spaces free and clear so the cars can get parked inside the garages and not parked in the guest stalls or on the streets.
Maybe the staff could work out some type of alternative language that, you know, gets to the point we all want to get, but doesn't make us look like a nanny state.
Okay, I think we've given you direction on that specific item, and leave this to your capable hands.
The other question that I have on this, and it's not something that I think we should solve tonight. I don't know whether an individual owner of one of these condo units would have the legal right to convert one of their garages to an accessory dwelling unit.
They do.
Okay, so that I think maybe is something else that needs to be addressed in the CCNRs. Then I'm not the right person to put forward ideas, but it's a question.
But based on the current laws, the city does, if I understand the accessory dwelling rules now, the city doesn't get a chance to say no on those ADUs.
Yes, that's correct. And actually there is a provision of the new state housing law that prevents HOAs from being able to prevent ADUs from being constructed in the garage, even if there's a provision in the CCNRs that limit improvements within the garage or maintaining minimum parking spaces. There is language in new state housing law. I shouldn't say new, but recent state housing law that does allow for ADUs to be constructed in garages.
It's a brave new world.
Yeah, I have a comment question on the next item, item 17. I don't exactly understand the purpose of the one unit being prototyped with all the new technology, and to what end, and what is the purpose of including that as a condition, and what will be done with the one prototype unit once it's presented to city staff?
Typically what the model unit would provide is what potential options could be included should a potential buyer be interested in perhaps a charging station or the ability to use certain green technology, and so it would just showcase what potential options there may be that the developer could offer for installation.
And then there's a follow-on expectation that what's shown in the model unit that the Planning Service Division has looked at, that those are now available for inclusion with future units. Is that that's kind of the theory behind showcasing all of the technology, I guess?
The expectation would be that if a potential buyer were to want to choose those options that are showcased in this model, that they would be able to incorporate those into their own unit that they're purchasing. So we would be reviewing what those options are. It's not necessarily, a zero emissions home, but we would be working with the applicant on what could be feasible as options.
Okay, that all makes sense. It just doesn't read that anything other than Planning Services Division gets to look at the stuff. It doesn't really say just what you explained, Cindy, but I understand the intent.
Okay. All right. Anything else on page 3 of 18? All right, next page, here we go. Okay, Planning Services Special Conditions, 19, 20, and 21. So I think 21 is the one that we may deal with.
I had a question on 20.
Okay, very good.
How did the figure of $5 million get picked?
Going to defer to Lauren.
That's actually the threshold established by the program that allows for that consideration of it's $5 million in material costs. That's the threshold.
But it's a threshold set by what?
By the state Board of Equalization.
Okay. Just wanted to know where it came from. They threw a dart at the wall and said, let's go 5 instead of 3. Okay.
That's 5.
Okay.
So on this one, our commissioner sounded like we were leaning to the actual building of the 20 of the units. Okay, so I'm reading this payment of affordable housing fees. So that's different than the affordable units. No, here we go. 4, 6, and 10. No, it's all there. Never mind. Sorry, pardon me. So this does meet what we've recommended, building of the 20 units.
Right, I think, and Commissioner Edwards would know better than me as a former chairman of Housing Advisory, but the must build applies to the attached multifamily part of the project, whereas the detached single family homes, that's where the in-lieu fee kicks in.
Yes, but it sounds like Summerhill's prepared to build all 20, and I applaud them for that.
Any other comments on this page? Okay. So I had a question on item number 23, where it says that the documented income exceeds the area median. So the question is what is the timing in determining the area median, and how often does that get established? Does that need to somehow, is that part of this, or is this just something that the state?
So to answer your first question about at what point do we establish the area mean income, that is done annually by the state. They identify for Contra Costa County, typically April or May timeframe, they'll let us know what the area median income is. And then 30 or 50 or 80% of that, we use that based off of the state's annual area median income that they provide for Contra Costa County. The Affordable Housing Agreement will address those limits, and at the time that the units are sold, when those units are sold, we would use the latest area median income to establish what the cost for those units are. If for some reason the units span over a year and the new area median income is increased or decreased, but usually increased, we would, if there are still units to be sold, we would readjust the price based on, we would readjust the qualifications for those income limits at that particular, whenever the changes were made to area median. And it would be specified in the Affordable Housing Agreement. That's how it would be done.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that in the event that these were built at different times, whether or not the numbers would change or reflect those being adjusted. And it sounds like you've addressed that concern. Okay, very good. Item 24, 25, 26. No. 27. Okay. And then I had some questions about number 28, about the in the affordable units, durable, good quality, and consistency, and dispersed. in a manner acceptable to the community. So the question is, are there standards for how these items or how the units are going to be dispersed? Or is this, we just leave this up to Debbie? This is item number 28.
So regarding the disbursement of the units, typically as part of the affordable housing agreement, the applicant would identify and then work with staff to determine where those units are. As we saw, there's a range of 3 and 4 bedroom units. Because they're in the townhomes are arranged in different buildings. So almost always in a building where you have several different types of units, you wouldn't say that that building is all affordable and then everybody else is, in the other buildings are market rate. But we would be checking to see which units are designated in which buildings as affordable units and make sure that they're not just grouped into one or 2 buildings in the development, but it will be included as part of the affordable housing agreement so that at the time that those units were offered for sale, we would be checking against the agreement for where those units are going to be placed.
I'm sorry, this never occurred to me previously, and I hope you will indulge me in the question. What provisions are there if I am a disabled person and I need disability accommodations, but I also qualify for a very low housing unit, which sounds to me like it would require some specialized equipment. Is that something that the developer, is there some mechanism to account for that? For being able to accommodate those requirements?
Sure. So fortunately, I'm not an expert on ADA requirements. Probably somebody on the applicant side could address this more specifically, but my understanding, at least with ADA requirements or the state mandates for disability accommodations, at least for single family homes, there isn't a requirement for ADA accessible options to be put into the unit. But we do have a condition that talks about accessibility for the multifamily units. That's typically something that is required. And because the townhomes are where you would find the affordable units to be set aside, there could potentially be, some improvements that could are identified as options that would go as part of that. That if some disabled persons were to move into a unit, that there is some options on an option sheet that they could pick and choose from to help accommodate for their disability, whether that's grab bars or, a tub versus shower entries. I believe that there are provisions for that on the multifamily units. And I don't know if Denise or Kevin, you might be able to address that more.
You can get back to me on that one if you all need to check that out. But there is certainly a strong likelihood that someone who would qualify for in the very low range, who would need accommodations, some sort of stair lift or elevator or something, because all of these units are multi-level. So I can get my answer at a next meeting on that one.
Okay. I actually had a comment or question on the first sentence in there, where we talk about interior fits and finished features and finishes. A couple of comments, and unfortunately I don't have a suggested rewording. I think the intent is that these units are indistinguishable from all other units, and I'm not sure if the language is written really captures that. And I'd like to suggest that not only is interior fits and finishes and not just durable or good quality or consistent, but indistinguishable. And I also think it probably should be more than just interior, front doors or windows or anything else. So I just think that we need to clean up the language a little bit to capture the intent, I think, of the affordable units being, again, indistinguishable from all other units of a similar size or type or whatever it might be.
Through the chair, if I could just address that. As far as exterior finishes, all of the exterior finishes will have to be designed based on the architectural plans that are part of the project plans. And so, at least from the exterior, they will all be developed based on what the plans show. So there would not be a distinction between an affordable unit and a market rate unit from the exterior. On the interior, because not all of the units in the affordables will have the upgrade opportunities that you would normally find in a market rate unit. The way that the condition is worded is making sure that that the standard improvements that would normally go into any home would be durable and of good quality and consistent with the standards for new housing. But it's in part because of the expectation that the affordable units are not going to have the same upgrades as a market rate unit may have. And so there may be some limitations. Different builders have different approaches for interiors. So I don't know if Denise can speak to how potentially these units may be different. I know in other developments, all of the interiors generally have a starting point of what they will build inside. And then there are maybe upgrades that are optional, but perhaps Denise can address that.
Yeah, Cindy, I think that's correct, that they would be the base unit without upgrades.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Okay, police services.
Yes.
And go ahead, Mr. Marks.
In conditions 36, 37, 38, and 39, I would recommend that the word should be changed to shall.
Okay. Right. Okay. All right.
So I've got a question about number 41.
Mhm.
This is maybe a question for Ms. Chamberlain and Mr. Barr. The condition says the city will accept dedication of the park. Is that the appropriate statement, or is it that the developer will dedicate it, will offer it for dedication?
It could be modified that the developer will offer the park for dedication. The intent is that the city will be accepting the park for public purposes and maintenance and ownership, but we could modify that language.
I mean, I think the critical point is that it's final approval of the punch list, so everything has to be complete for the city to accept it. But again, I think adding offer into that is appropriate as well.
Thank you.
And can I get a clarification where it says no public access will be allowed during the maintenance period? Is that during the construction period?
It's during the construction period, then following completion, there's a maintenance period while the grass is growing and
okay,
this is completed. So there's until the park is publicly accepted by the city council, there is no public access to it.
Okay, thank you. I was not familiar with that terminology.
Okay. I have a question for Ms. Chamberlain, if I can. Is this a dedication or a land sale for the land?
It's being dedicated to the city.
So there's no cash payment from the city for the land?
They will receive credit against their in lieu debt fees, but there is no cash exchange.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna ask this question now because this is where I wrote it in my notes. And I know, Debbie, you and I spoke about this, but there's been a lot of talk about that this park needs a bathroom, and there's no place where it says something along those lines. And I just don't want this topic to be lost in it. And I'm kind of concerned because part of why my understanding of why the park is where it is because they weren't going to build units on that because of the storm drain, infrastructure that was already there. So that is something that I'm still concerned about as we go forward. And this is where I put it in my notes. So.
Well, the ultimate design and approval of the park will rest with the Parks Commission. And so there will be a process that the park will go through prior to approval of the Parks Commission. So, and I believe, and Denise, correct me if I'm wrong, you've worked with some other concepts with the Parks Commission with Kathy Hyman.
Correct. Yes.
Do those include the design of a bathroom?
The Parks Commission was split.
Okay. Well, I think this is a concern for me, and I know I'm not on the Parks Commission, but if it doesn't get included early on, then it's not going to be put in later. So I just want this to be rising to the level of some concern, and that this is something that we need to get some language in here that says that the construction may include a public access bathroom. So, according to the Parks and Community Services, but I want if that is what they decide to do, I want Summerhill to agree to it and to be ready to build that and to have it doable in the park. So leave that for you guys to wrestle over. Especially if we want this to be part of a walking district where people can push strollers for miles and, have toddlers that need to use that.
I understand your concern, but it seems to me we're saying the Parks and Community Services Commission is going to design the park. And I think we ought to leave it to them to do the design, including whatever amenities or necessities are, in their opinion, appropriate.
I think what I'm trying to say is that I would like it to state that Summerhill will agree to all of those conditions. As they design this.
I'm not sure what all those conditions mean.
Well, if they decide that, yes, they definitely are going to push forward with the bathroom, that there isn't anything in the plans that we've seen that has anything to accommodate that plumbing and water supply and those sorts of things. And so if when they're getting ready to do the park and then decide like, oh no, we really can't do this, to me, that's a concern. I'm trying to be proactive in saying that ahead of time, this might be something you have to plan for.
Through the chair, if I could point you to perhaps condition number 100.
Okay, yes.
I believe it's on packet page 40, or I'm sorry, 38. There is a condition that requires the developer to process the improvement plans and I believe it's at least D and E that talk about the design, usage, maintenance goals, and that the developer would need to work with city staff and the Parks Commission for the design of the park.
And so that condition does obligate the developer to work with the commission and incorporate the elements that they're requiring prior to final park approval.
Ms. G, does the recommendation and the comments made here today make its way to the Parks Commissioner in terms of the Planning Commission and our comments here being advisory?
It does. So it would probably be included, and the Parks Director ultimately writes that report, but the expectation is that a summary of the process since, before arriving to the Parks Commission, they will summarize all of the meetings and the conversations that have occurred before it's presented to the Parks Commission. And so a summary of the Planning Commission's comments will be provided to them as part of the record of this of these meetings.
Is it as simple as in condition 100A and may include a bathroom for public use?
And I'm sorry, which number?
Condition 100A, inserting language in there that may include a bathroom for public use. So the commission's comfortable that your request, while it may not be ultimately approved, is at least before the Parks Commission at that point in time.
I would feel much better about having that language in there. Yes. I know we jumped forward, but.
This is condition 108.
100A.
Letter A.
Oh, letter A, okay.
As an apple.
Okay, so it's still not clear to me what additional language you want to put in COA 100 subpart A. I mean, as I understood it, the Parks Commission had discussed the issue of a bathroom on the premises and they were split. So I'm not sure why we would be telling the Parks Commission what they need to do.
Well, it says input from city staff and subsequent refinement of one of preferred alternative to carry through with the final master plan phase with the Parks and Community Service. And that what Debbie suggested is the simple statement that the design may include a public access restroom.
If you're going to put may include that, I don't have a problem with that. It's really not binding on anybody.
Yes, I think the intent is just to show the commission's interest. Bathroom should be created by the park design.
Okay.
I'm getting punchy, it's late.
Yes, it is. And we haven't had a bathroom break yet.
That's our motivation. Keep going.
Okay. Forging ahead. I'm sorry, I lost my place. So you guys will help me get back to, I know where we were with the plan page 28. Okay. 29.
Yes. Condition 47.
Okay.
The language, though there's some missing language. I would change what's there to say townhouses shall be required to include a fire sprinkler system per NFPA, et cetera, et cetera.
Through the chair, I would need to check with the fire district. Those conditions came directly from them on whether or not that could be modified. But at the next meeting, I'll have an update for the commission.
Okay, I was under the assumption that's what the fire folks wanted, but if they're talking about something as close to what's there now with May, that's fine.
Okay. Right, very good. All right. Anything else, commissioners, on that page? Moving on. Okay. I think this now we're into the section of yeah, homeowners association obligations. Okay. This is in part D, back to the earlier discussion. It says the interior of garages shall be inspected annually, but I think we want to make this consistent with the previous discussion on the CCNRs. Courtney, go ahead. No?
I think so.
Yeah, when we make the changes to 16, we'll make sure that they are consistent with 52D.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else? All right, moving on. Seeing no other. On page 31, this is the letter N, 52N. Is the discussion of speed humps, and this was the first time I post-construction funding for the installation of traffic calming measures such as speed humps will be provided by the Homeowners Association. This was the first time I think anyone had seen any reference to traffic calming measures. So just wanted to point that out, that it seems like this is already in the works for would that include A Street or just the smaller streets? Could we get a clarification on which streets might be getting speed humps? Or never mind.
Sure. There actually are not speed humps that are currently proposed as part of this project.
Okay.
The recommendation would be that if in the future the HOA or were to want to install speed humps or speed radar signs or the like for traffic calming purposes, that they would be responsible for funding those that installation.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I think condition number 55 needs revision also with respect to the garage usage.
Okay. Thank you. Right. Moving on, packet page 32, anybody? Comments? No. All right. Continuing on.
I had a question on 68. Dublin San Roan Services District, are they providing services to this development? Number 68.
Yeah, I believe the cutoff, they would not be in this service district. I believe Central San and East Bay Mud would be the utility providers for this location, but it's just a standard list of utility providers. We have it as a standard condition.
Great, thank you.
However, they could provide reclaimed water through the Durwa project.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Seeing no others. Next page. All right. We're getting down there, you guys. You can do this. All right, next page. Page 13. All right. So another reference to the park. Moving on. Hearing no objections. Turning the page. Okay. All right. All right, we're getting to the next page. Home stretch.
Number 99.
99. Oops, one more page.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's all good. Number 99.
There's a reference to the park being at the corner of Camino Ramon and Norris Canyon. I think that should be Exec Parkway.
Oh, yep. I think you're right.
And then further down, there's a sentence that says, the proposed park should incorporate the comments provided by the Parks and Community Services Commission, with the park intended to be passive in nature. I think at that point, we're preempting the design of the Parks and Community Services Commission, and that sentence, or at least that portion of the sentence, should be taken out.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. That was a comment that I wrote also. So it should to read, the proposed park should incorporate comments, and then period at the end of commission. Okay.
I don't see having the sentence makes much sense at all, but however you want to restructure it, that's fine.
Well, I think that sort of begs that question about, the statement here then specifies the design of the park, and we've already, said that is the Parks Department. So I think they were just trying to incorporate Parks Commission comments.
Right. And when they start talking about the trees and
Yeah.
paths that loop and all, that's design issues.
I agree.
If through the chair, if I recall, the Parks Commission did on the 14th, that was the direction that was provided to the applicant as to what the future design of the park would be. And then condition of approval 100 would require them to provide 2 alternative designs for the Parks Commission to consider.
So are you saying that if we strike this sentence in number 99, then when they create the 2 design concepts they're not bound to those statements if they're not in the conditions of approval?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just trying to respect the direction from the Parks Commission through their director into the conditions of approval.
Okay.
Well, it just seems to me that that's what the Parks Commission will do. If they think that that's what needs to be there, that's fine. But it just seems that the Planning Commission should not be directing the design that the Parks and Community Services Commission is going to come up with. They're free to do whatever that sentence says, and they can incorporate it into the 2 alternative designs. But I wouldn't want the Parks and Community Services Commission to start telling the Planning Commission what it ought to do or how it ought to design something. They're in business to design the parks.
Do we lose anything if we just take out the rest of the paragraph after the date of July 14th, 2021, given that we have paragraph 100?
I don't think we do. I think it's fine once you stop there.
Through the chair, why don't we, if you wouldn't mind, why doesn't saying discuss that condition with the parks director who provided these conditions to us for consideration tonight?
I'm sorry, the beginning part.
Yeah, the conditions of approval that you were reading from the Parks Commission were provided by the Parks Director. So I would like to have city consult with her over the proposed change to the condition, and then we can bring it back to you in the final round.
Absolutely. My understanding of going through this was this is giving staff feedback. So please do. Okay.
I had a question on 101. The percentages listed, what do those refer to?
There's stages in the design process.
Oh, okay. So it's 65, 95, and final of the design process. Is what
Right.
that,
It's the actual plans themselves, how well developed they are.
got it. Okay. Maybe there's just a missing couple of words at the end of them. Yeah. Or it's understood. That's what it means.
Okay. We got to the last page. Anything else, commissioners?
Yeah, I would like to suggest some conditions. And here I need some staff assistance. Unless specifically required by the building code, I'd like to add a condition of approval that every garage in the development be wired to support electric vehicle charging. Maybe that's already covered in the building code, I'm not sure. But if it isn't, I'd like to see a condition added to that effect. And then I'd like, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I believe pre-wiring is a requirement, but there's probably no harm in including it.
Lastly, I'd like to add a condition that requires that all residential units be designed and constructed in accordance with the newly revised North Camino Ramon Specific Plan Building Design Guidelines. We just went through a process where we laid out what the guidelines were for buildings. I'd like to mention that in the conditions. And then lastly, it's not a condition, but we didn't get will serve letters from all the different agencies. We got a table that indicated that they had been informed. But I'd like to read the will serve letters and see what the various agencies are saying.
Is that different than condition 68? The applicant shall provide evidence of approvals from utility providers?
I mean, I think it is.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
I believe it's a different stage of the process. I mean, typically East Bay Mud will provide a will serve or an acknowledgement that they can serve the project. Then it gets down to design level approvals and meeting all the requirements of each of the utilities themselves. So, I mean, essentially you wouldn't get past that condition if you didn't have a will serve letter. They wouldn't issue compliance documents.
And those letters are required prior to filing the final map, correct?
Oh, through the chair. If I could just offer that it's actually a project completeness review that the city does. And so we do have will serve letters from each of the utility companies. That is a requirement that we're checking for as part of project completeness. So if you do want copies of those, I can provide those, but it is something that is on our checklist.
I absolutely know that you do that. I would like to read what they say, and I'd like to see what police and fire say.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and we got all the way to the end. I missed the page 18 of 18. I'm assuming we had no comment on the bike racks or anything to adjust there. All right. back to the agenda. So my understanding is that we have spoken on the conditions of approval, and we were asked to give feedback to staff. And then we are, there is whether or not to create a motion. So is there a motion to continue this on to the November 2nd meeting?
I would move that we continue the hearing on city village applications on November 2nd, 2021.
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. We had mover Commissioner Wallace,
Aye.
seconder Vice Chair Alpert,
Aye.
Commissioner Edwards,
Aye.
Commissioner Marks,
Aye.
and Chair Kuznick.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 9.1 is continued to the November 2nd meeting.
Very good. Thank you so much. All right. I know we just have a couple more things. Is everyone good to forge ahead? All right, we're forging ahead. All right, item 10. Sorry, I lost my place. 10, item 10, public hearing, new items. We have none. Item 11, non-public hearing action items. There are none. Item 12, the study session, commissioner liaison reports and interest of staff items. So, commissioners, do we have any liaison reports? Yes, Chair. I always want to give you the title back. Commissioner Wallace.
Thank you. I attended the Open Space Committee meeting. First thing is they have hikes set up in San Ramon for virtually every month between now and May, usually on Saturday mornings about 9 o'clock. Second, Open Space has a very ambitious program for preserving open space in and around San Ramon, and including meeting with virtually every open space agency in the Tri-Valley or greater Contra Costa County. One thing they probably should consider doing is figuring out how much money's in the open space fund to figure out what they can really do. But they're a very ambitious group.
Oh, good for them. Good for them. Thank you very much. Any other liaisons? I know transportation meets on Thursday, so I do not have a transportation committee report. Other commissioners? No? All right. So at this point, we will ask Lauren to give us an update. Coming attractions.
Okay, so on November 2nd, we have the City Village continued public hearing that we talked about tonight. And then we also have the Golden Skate townhome proposal coming back for consideration. And so that's for the 2nd, and then we're working on some scheduling of items for the 16th.
All right. Okay, unless, just want to make sure, any other comments before we strike the gavel? All right, so without any other comments, we will move to item 13, which is the adjournment. So we are adjourning the meeting at 9:47. Thank you, one and all. It's been a long few hours, so appreciate that. Good work, you guys. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Staff, good job as well. Take care.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.